The rain in Seattle does not wash things clean. It merely makes the grime slicker, turning the city's steep hills into treacherous slides of asphalt and regret. Inside the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower, the air was conditioned to a sterile chill that had nothing to do with the weather outside. It was the kind of cold that preserved things, keeping them static, unchanging, and perfectly ordered. Alara Vance stood at the far end of the long mahogany table, her hands clasped loosely behind her back, her posture so still she might have been mistaken for a piece of modern art if not for the slight, rhythmic rise and fall of her chest. She was wearing a cardigan that was 2 sizes too large, the wool fraying slightly at the cuffs, a stark contrast to the razor-sharp suits of the men and women seated around her. They were the architects of the city's future, or so they claimed, designing the skeletal structures that would pierce the clouds. Alara was the one who checked their math, or rather she was supposed to be. In reality, she was the one who fetched coffee, organized the filing cabinets, and absorbed the silent, simmering contempt of a team that believed efficiency was a personality trait and empathy was a structural weakness. Marcus Thorne, the lead structural engineer and the self-appointed king of this particular kingdom, tapped his pen against the table. The sound was sharp, like a crack of a whip in the quiet room. He didn't look at Alara. He looked at the projection screen where a complex 3D model of the new Aurora Bridge rotated slowly. "We are behind schedule," Marcus said, his voice smooth and devoid of urgency, which somehow made it more threatening. "And we are over budget. And we have a junior analyst who seems to think that double-checking is a valid use of company time." He finally turned his head, his eyes sliding over Alara with the casual dismissal one might give a smudge on a windowpane. "Alara, did you finish the load-bearing calculations for the northern pylons, or were you too busy organizing the breakroom pantry again?" A few of the other engineers chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. Alara didn't flinch. She didn't lower her gaze, but she didn't meet his either. She looked at the space just above his left shoulder, a technique she had perfected over 3 years of employment. "The calculations are complete, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice soft, barely rising above the hum of the HVAC system. "I also noticed a discrepancy in the steel-grade specifications for the secondary supports. I flagged it in the report." Marcus sighed, a long, exaggerated exhale that signaled his profound exhaustion with her existence. "A discrepancy," he repeated, tasting the word as if it were sour milk. "You see discrepancies everywhere, Alara. It's a symptom of anxiety. You look for problems because you don't trust your own ability to solve them. We use grade A steel. It's in the contract. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel because you're bored." He turned back to the screen, dismissing her entirely. The meeting continued, a torrent of jargon and ego, with Alara standing as a silent sentinel at the edge of the room. She was invisible, yet everyone knew she was there, a reminder of what happened when you failed to climb the ladder. They called her too soft. It wasn't just an insult, it was their diagnosis. In their world, softness was a defect. It meant you couldn't make the hard calls, you couldn't fire the underperformers, you couldn't cut corners to save a margin. Alara's softness was evident in the way she listened to the janitorial staff, in the way she remembered birthdays, in the way she never raised her voice even when she was right. They mistook her gentleness for incompetence, her silence for ignorance. They had no idea that the woman standing in the shadows, clutching her frayed cardigan, had once held a clearance level higher than anyone in that room could imagine. They had no idea that the hands they mocked for being too delicate to hold a blueprint had once stabilized a collapsing reactor core with nothing but a slide rule and sheer will. But that was a life she had buried, a life that had ended in fire and ash, leaving her with scars that didn't show on her skin but ran deep into her soul. She had come here to hide, to find a place where the stakes were low and the consequences were merely financial, not mortal. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor, and it rarely lets you stay hidden for long. Pause. If you are enjoying this story of hidden strength and quiet dignity, please take a moment to like this video. Your support helps us bring more narratives of justice and redemption to light. Subscribe to join our community of storytellers who believe that kindness is not a weakness, but a formidable power. The office culture at Meridian Engineering was built on a foundation of aggressive meritocracy. It was a place where ideas were stolen, Reddit was hoarded, and vulnerability was hunted like prey. Alara's desk was located in the corner of the open-plan floor, near the restrooms, a location chosen specifically to minimize her visibility. From here, she could hear everything. She heard the whispered complaints about overtime, the bragging about bonuses, the subtle put-downs disguised as mentorship. She also heard the things they didn't say out loud. She heard the hesitation in Marcus's voice when he spoke to the clients, the fear that lurked beneath his arrogance. She saw the way he shuffled papers when the senior partners visited, trying to look busy, trying to look essential. Alara knew the truth. Marcus was a manager, not an engineer. He had risen through the ranks by networking and intimidation, not by calculation. He relied on his team to do the heavy lifting, and he relied on Alara to catch the mistakes he was too proud to look for. One Tuesday afternoon, the tension in the office was palpable. A major inspection was scheduled for the following week, and the Aurora Bridge project was fraught with issues. The soil samples from the construction site had come back inconsistent, suggesting that the bedrock was not as stable as the initial surveys had indicated. Marcus had dismissed the report, blaming the lab for error. "It's a glitch," he had told the team, waving away the data. "We proceed as planned." "We don't have time for second guesses." Alara had sat at her desk, staring at the raw data on her screen. The numbers didn't lie. The variance was small, but it was consistent. It pointed to a subsurface fault line that ran directly beneath the proposed anchor point for the main pylon. If they drove the piles too deep, they could trigger a shift. It was a low-probability event, but the consequence was catastrophic. She had printed the report and walked it to Marcus's office. He hadn't even looked at it. He had tossed it into the recycling bin without breaking eye contact with his phone. "Alara," he had said, his tone patronizingly sweet. "You need to learn to trust the process. We have experts for this. You are an analyst. Your job is to input data, not interpret geology. Go make some coffee, the dark roast, and try to smile this time. It unsettles the clients when you look like you're attending a funeral." Alara had picked up the report from the bin, smoothed out the crumpled paper, and returned to her desk. She didn't make the coffee. Instead, she spent the next 4 hours running simulations. She used her personal laptop, a battered old machine that she kept encrypted and offline. She modeled the stress vectors, the soil density, the potential shear forces. The result was always the same, a 20% chance of significant settlement within the first 5 years. It wasn't a guarantee of collapse, but it was a guarantee of failure. The bridge would crack. It would need expensive repairs. It would be a scandal. She saved the file, labeled it personal notes, and deleted it from the server. She knew that if she pushed it, Marcus would fire her. He would claim she was insubordinate, that she was causing panic, that she was unfit for the high-pressure environment of modern engineering. And he would be right in their eyes. She was too soft to play the game, so she waited. She watched, she prepared. Pause. Have you ever been in a situation where your expertise was ignored because of prejudice or bias? Share your experience in the comments below. We read every story, and your voices help shape the conversations we have here. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a chapter of this journey. The days leading up to the inspection were a blur of frantic activity. The team worked late nights, fueled by takeout food and adrenaline. Marcus was everywhere, barking orders, taking credit for minor breakthroughs, and deflecting blame for every setback. Alara worked silently, correcting errors in the background, fixing formatting issues, ensuring that the final presentation deck was flawless. She did it not because she wanted to help Marcus, but because she cared about the work. She cared about the integrity of the structure. She cared about the people who would one day drive across that bridge. It was a compulsion, a need for order in a chaotic world. One evening, as the rest of the team left for the night, Alara stayed behind. The office was empty, the lights dimmed to a low hum. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. She thought about her past, about the lab in Geneva, about the colleagues she had lost. She had promised herself that she would never again be in a position where her voice mattered less than her title. But here she was, silenced by a man who couldn't calculate a beam load if his life depended on it. She turned away from the window and went back to her desk. She pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook from her drawer. T was filled with handwritten notes, sketches, and equations. It was her sanctuary. In those pages, she was not too soft. She was Dr. Alara Vance, Ph.D. in structural dynamics, former lead consultant for the International Atomic Energy Agency. She had designed containment systems for nuclear facilities in 3 continents. She had solved the resonance problem in the Tokyo Skytree. She had walked away from it all after an accident that wasn't her fault, but for which she had been blamed. The media had painted her as reckless, as overly cautious, as a woman who couldn't handle the pressure. She had let them. She had let them destroy her reputation because she was tired of fighting. She had come to Seattle to disappear, but the notebook reminded her of who she was. And as she looked at the Aurora Bridge plans on her screen, she felt a familiar itch, the itch of a problem unsolved. The itch of a truth unseen. The morning of the inspection arrived with a gray, oppressive sky. The senior partners from the firm's headquarters flew in from New York, along with a representative from the city's Department of Transportation. The atmosphere in the conference room was electric with tension. Marcus was dressed in his best suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, his smile wide and practiced. He greeted the visitors with confidence, guiding them to their seats. Alara stood in the back, holding a stack of printed reports. She was invisible as always. The presentation began. Marcus spoke eloquently about the vision, the aesthetics, the economic impact. He glossed over the technical details, relying on the charts and graphs that Alara had prepared. The visitors nodded, impressed by the polish, if not the substance. Then the Q&A session began. The DOT representative, a stern woman named Director Holloway, asked a question about the foundation depth. "Given the recent seismic activity in the region," she said, "what safeguards have you implemented to account for soil liquefaction?" Marcus froze. He hadn't prepared for this. He glanced at his team, hoping someone would jump in. But they were all looking at him, waiting for the leader to lead. He cleared his throat. "Well," he said, stalling, "we have followed all standard protocols. The soil tests were conclusive. We are well within the safety margins." Director Holloway narrowed her eyes. "Standard protocols are not enough for a project of this magnitude. I want to see the raw data. I want to see the variance analysis." Marcus panicked. He looked at Alara. "Alara," he snapped, "get the data now." Alara stepped forward. She placed the report on the table, but it wasn't the report Marcus had approved. It was the one she had saved, the one with the discrepancy. She opened it to the relevant page. "Here is the variance analysis," she said, her voice steady. "As you can see, there is a consistent deviation in the soil density readings from Sector 4. It suggests a potential fault line." The room went silent. Marcus stared at her, his face turning red. "What is this?" he hissed. "This is not the approved report." "It is the accurate report," Alara said. "I flagged this issue 2 weeks ago. It was dismissed." Director Holloway picked up the report. She scanned the pages, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at Marcus. "Is this true? Did you dismiss this finding?" Marcus laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Of course not. This is a draft, an outdated version. Alara is confused. She's been working on too many projects. She's stressed." He turned to Alara, his eyes blazing with fury. "Apologize. Tell them you made a mistake." Alara looked at him. She looked at the partners who were watching with interest. She looked at Director Holloway, who was waiting for the truth. And in that moment, Alara had a choice. She could apologize. She could retreat. She could accept the label of too soft and let it define her, or she could stand her ground. She took a breath. "I did not make a mistake," she said. "The data is correct. If you proceed with the current plan, you are risking the structural integrity of the bridge." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "That is enough," he shouted. "You are fired. Get out of my sight." The partners shifted uncomfortably. Director Holloway closed the report. "We will review this data," she said calmly. "Mr. Thorne, please step outside. Ms. Vance, remain here." Marcus stormed out of the room, throwing a glare at Alara that promised retribution. The door slammed shut behind him. Alara stood alone in the center of the room, surrounded by strangers who held her fate in their hands. She felt a strange sense of calm. She had spoken the truth. Whatever happened next, she had done her duty. Pause. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to our channel. We are dedicated to bringing you high-quality narratives that explore the complexities of human character and the triumph of integrity. Your subscription support. RTS, our mission to tell stories that matter. The aftermath of the meeting was swift and brutal. Marcus did not wait for the official review. He used his influence to spin the narrative. By lunchtime, the rumor mill was churning. Alara was portrayed as a disgruntled employee, a saboteur who had tried to undermine the project out of spite. Her softness was reinterpreted as instability. Her silence was interpreted as guilt. HR called her into a small, windowless office. The representative, a man named Gary who had always avoided eye contact with her, slid a termination letter across the desk. "We appreciate your contributions," he said, reciting the script. "But given the disruption caused during the client meeting and the insubordination displayed towards your supervisor, we feel it is best to part ways, effective immediately." Alara looked at the letter. It was typed on heavy, expensive paper. It listed her offenses: unprofessional conduct, dissemination of inaccurate information, creating a hostile work environment. It was a masterpiece of corporate gaslighting. "The information was accurate," Alara said. "The soil data proves it." Gary shrugged. That is a technical dispute between engineers. What matters here is the chain of command. You undermined Mr. Thorne. That is unacceptable. Please pack your belongings. Security will escort you out. Alara stood up. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply nodded. She walked back to her desk, the eyes of her colleagues boring into her back. Some looked away, ashamed. Others looked with satisfaction, glad that the source of their discomfort was gone. She packed her few personal items, a photo of her mother, a small succulent plant, and her leather-bound notebook. She left the rest. The computer, the files, the years of unpaid labor. She walked to the elevator, her head held high. As the doors closed, she saw Marcus standing in the doorway of his office, watching her leave. He was smiling. It was a triumphant smile. He had won. He had protected his ego, his status, his lie. But Alara knew something he didn't. She knew that the truth has a weight of its own, and gravity, unlike pride, cannot be ignored. She walked out of the Meridian Tower and into the rain. The city was loud, chaotic, indifferent. She hailed a cab and gave the driver her address. She sat in the back seat, watching the buildings blur past. She felt a hollow ache in her chest, not because she had lost her job, but because she had failed to prevent the injustice. She had tried to do the right thing, and she had been punished for it. It was a familiar pattern, but this time it felt different. This time she had left a trail. She had given the report to Director Holloway. She had put the data on the record. It might not be enough to save her career, but it might be enough to save the bridge. And that, she realized, was enough for now. Pause. Before we continue to the next phase of Alara's journey, please take a moment to like this video. Your engagement helps us reach more viewers who appreciate stories of resilience and moral courage. Thank you for being part of our community. The next 2 weeks were a blur of unemployment and uncertainty. Alara spent her days in her small apartment, reading, walking, and trying to find a new purpose. She applied for jobs, but her references were poisoned. Marcus had ensured that. Every interview ended in a polite rejection. She was becoming a pariah in the industry, but she didn't despair. She spent her time studying the news, watching for any mention of the Aurora Bridge. There was nothing. The project was proceeding. The construction crews were on site. The piles were being driven. Alara felt a growing sense of dread. She checked the weather forecasts, the seismic monitors, the local news. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then on a rainy Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after her firing, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Alara answered it cautiously. "Ms. Vance?" a voice asked. It was Director Holloway. "I need you to come to the construction site immediately. There has been an incident." Alara's heart skipped a beat. What kind of incident? "A partial collapse of the northern pylon foundation," Holloway said. "No injuries, thank God, but the structure is compromised. We need your expertise. Can you come?" Alara didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She grabbed her coat and her notebook and ran out the door. The rain was pouring down, heavier than before. The streets were flooded. Traffic was gridlocked. She abandoned her car and ran the last 6 blocks to the site. When she arrived, the scene was chaotic. Police tape cordoned off the area. Emergency vehicles flashed their lights. Construction workers stood in groups, shaking their heads, looking shaken. In the center of the site, the massive steel pylon leaned at a precarious angle. The ground around it had sunk, creating a crater of mud and debris. Director Hallow. I was standing under a tarp talking to a group of officials. She saw Alara and waved her over. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We halted construction immediately, but we need to know what happened, and we need to know how to fix it." Alara looked at the damage. She didn't need to run simulations. She could see it with her naked eye. The soil had liquefied. The fault line had shifted. The pile had punched through the unstable layer, causing the surrounding earth to give way. It was exactly what she had predicted. "It's the fault line," she said. The vibration from the pile driving triggered the shift. The soil couldn't support the load. Holloway nodded grimly. "Mr. Thorne claims it was an act of God, unforeseeable. He says your report was flawed." Alara laughed, a bitter, short sound. "My report was accurate. He ignored it." "We know," Holloway said, "but we need proof. We need to stabilize the site before the rain causes further erosion. Do you have a plan?" Alara opened her notebook. She flipped to a page she had sketched out weeks ago. A contingency plan, a way to reinforce the foundation without removing the pylon. It was risky, complex, and required precision, but it was possible. "Yes," she said, "I have a plan." Holloway looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "Can you execute it?" "I can design it," Alara said, "but I need a team and I need authority." Holloway smiled, a faint, tired smile. "You have both come with me." Pause. As Alara steps back into the arena, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. We are building a library of stories that celebrate competence and justice, and we want you to be part of it. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest releases. Command Center was a temporary trailer set up on the edge of the site. Inside, it was hot and crowded. Engineers, contractors, and city officials were arguing over blueprints and schedules. Marcus Thorne was there, standing in the center of the room, shouting over the noise. He looked disheveled, his suit stained with mud, his eyes bloodshot. He was losing control, and he knew it. When Alara walked in with Director Holloway, the room went quiet. Marcus saw her, and his face twisted in rage. "You." He spat. "What are you doing here? You're fired, you're banned from this site." Holloway stepped forward. "Mr. Thorne, sit down. Ms. Vance is here as a special consultant. Her insights are critical to resolving this crisis." Marcus scoffed. "Insights? She's the one who caused this. Her faulty data led us astray." Alara walked to the table where the blueprints were spread out. She ignored Marcus. She looked at the maps, the soil reports, the damage assessment. She picked up a pencil and began to draw. The room watched her, skeptical, curious, afraid. She drew a series of lines indicating where additional supports needed to be installed. She calculated the angles, the loads, the tension. She worked quickly, efficiently, her mind clear and focused. When she finished, she stepped back. "We need to inject grout into the soil around the base," she said. "Not just any grout, a quick-setting polymer mix. We need to drill 6 injection points here, here, and here. Then we install temporary steel braces to stabilize the pylon while the grout cures. It will take 12 hours. If we wait longer, the rain will wash away the remaining support and the pylon will fall." The chief engineer, an older man named Davis, looked at the drawing. He squinted, then nodded. "It's bold," he said, "but it might work. The physics check out." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "This is insanity. We don't know this woman. She's a disgraced analyst. We should be calling in external experts." "We are," Holloway said. "But until they arrive, Ms. Vance is in charge of the stabilization effort. Mr. Thorne, you are relieved of your duties pending an internal investigation. Leave the site." Marcus stared at her, incredulous. "You can't do this. I'm the lead engineer." "Not anymore," Holloway said. "Security, escort Mr. Thorne out." 2 security guards stepped forward. Marcus looked at Alara, his eyes filled with hate. "This isn't over," he whispered. "You think you've won? You've just made yourself a target." Alara didn't respond. She didn't look at him. She looked at the blueprint. She looked at the clock. "We have 12 hours," she said. "Let's get to work." Pause. If you are captivated by Alara's calm under pressure, please leave a comment below telling us what you think her next move should be. Your interactions help us tailor our storytelling to your interests. Don't forget to share this video with friends who love a good underdog story. The next 12 hours were a test of endurance and precision. Alara directed the crew with a clarity that surprised everyone. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She gave clear, concise instructions. She monitored the sensors, adjusted the mix ratios, and coordinated the drilling she moved through the chaos like a conductor, bringing order to the disorder. The workers, initially skeptical, began to respect her. They saw that she knew what she was doing. They saw that she cared about their safety. She stayed wet, cold, and muddy, refusing to retreat to the warmth of the trailer. She was there in the trenches with them. As the night wore on, the rain intensified. The wind howled, shaking the temporary structures. The pylon groaned, shifting slightly. Alara watched the monitors, her eyes fixed on the data. "Hold steady," she said into her radio. "Inject the second batch, now." The crew obeyed. The grout pumped into the ground. The sensors showed the pressure increasing. The soil was stabilizing. But then a warning light flashed. One of the injection hoses had burst. Mud sprayed everywhere. The pressure dropped. "Shut it down," Alara shouted. "Seal the line." A worker rushed to fix the leak, but the pressure was dropping too fast. The pylon shifted again, more noticeably this time. A crack appeared in the concrete base. "We're losing it," Davis said, his voice trembling. "We need to evacuate." Alara looked at the data. She looked at the pylon. She calculated the rate of decay. "No," she said. "If we evacuate, the pylon falls. We have to patch the line manually. Someone needs to go in and clamp it." "It's too dangerous," Davis said. "The pressure could blow the clamp off. It could kill whoever tries it." Alara took off her gloves. "I'll do it." "You're crazy," Davis said. "Maybe," Alara said, "but I'm the only one who knows exactly where to place the clamp. Stay here. Monitor the levels." She ran towards the leak, slipping in the mud. The spray was intense, blinding. She reached the hose, her hands shaking from the cold. She grabbed the manual clamp. She positioned it over the burst section. She tightened it, using all her strength. The hose vibrated violently. She held on. She screamed, not in fear, but in effort. The clamp locked. The spray stopped. The pressure began to rise again. Alara fell back into the mud, gasping for air. She was covered in sludge, her clothes torn, her hands bleeding, but the sensors showed green. The pylon was stable. The crew cheered, a ragged, exhausted sound. Alara lay there for a moment, looking up at the rain. She had done it. She had saved the bridge, and in doing so, she had revealed herself, not as too soft, but as unbreakable. Pause. This moment of triumph is just the beginning. To ensure you don't miss the dramatic confrontation and final vindication in Part 2, please subscribe now. We have much more to reveal about Alara's past and the fate of those who underestimated her. As dawn broke, the rain finally stopped. The sun rose over the Seattle skyline, casting a golden light on the muddy construction site. The pylon stood firm, stabilized by the grout and the braces. Alara sat on a crate, drinking a cup of lukewarm coffee. Her hands were bandaged, her face was bruised, but she was alive. Director Holloway approached her, accompanied by a group of men in suits. Among them was a tall, distinguished figure with silver hair and a commanding presence. He wore a military-style coat, though he was clearly a civilian. He looked at Alara with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. "Ms. Vance," Holloway said, "this is General Sterling. He's here from the Department of Defense. He has some questions for you." Alara stiffened. She knew that name. General Sterling was a legend. He had overseen the reconstruction of critical infrastructure after the Geneva incident. He was the man who had signed her discharge papers. He was the man who had known the truth. General Sterling stepped forward. He didn't smile, he didn't frown, he simply looked at her. "Dr. Vance," he said, "it's been a long time." Alara stood up. She wiped the mud from her face. "General," she said, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to find you here," Sterling said. "But then, I suppose I should have. You never could stay away from a problem that needed solving." He turned to Holloway. "Director, I believe we have some catching up to do, and I believe Ms. Vance has some explaining to do about who she really is." Alara looked at Sterling, then at Holloway, then at the crowd of workers and engineers who were watching in silence. The secret was out. The mask was off. And for the first time in 3 years, Alara Vance was not afraid. She was ready. The air in the command trailer seemed to thicken, the ambient noise of the construction site fading into a distant hum as General Sterling's words hung in the space between them. Dr. Vance. The title landed with the weight of a gavel strike, shattering the persona of the timid analyst that Alara had worn like a shield for 3 years. Director Holloway looked from the general to Alara, her expression shifting from professional concern to bewildered intrigue. She had hired a consultant, or so she thought, but SH. He had inadvertently summoned a ghost from the highest echelons of engineering and national security. Alara did not shrink from the general's gaze. Instead, she straightened her spine, the mud-stained cardigan suddenly looking less like a rag and more like a battle uniform. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. The slouch was gone. The hesitation in her eyes had been replaced by a steely resolve that mirrored the steel beams they had just saved. General Sterling gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit, Alara," he said, his voice softer now, stripped of the command tone he used for troops. "We have much to discuss and little time. The city is waking up and the press will be here within the hour. We need a narrative and, more importantly, we need the truth." Alara sat. She didn't look at the other engineers in the room, including the stunned Chief Engineer Davis, who was staring at her as if she had grown a second head. She focused on Sterling. "The truth is simple, General," she said. "The soil was unstable. The protocol was ignored. The bridge was at risk. I tried to warn them. I was silenced. And when the crisis hit, I did what was necessary to prevent catastrophe." Sterling nodded slowly. "And the rest, the Geneva incident, the resignation, the disappearance." Lara took a deep breath. This was the part she had feared most, the part of her history that had been twisted by the media into a tale of incompetence and cowardice. "Geneva was not a failure of engineering," she said, her voice low but clear. "It was a failure of leadership. The containment protocols were overridden by political pressure to accelerate the timeline. I refused to sign off on the safety checks. I was removed from the project. 2 days later, the reactor suffered a partial meltdown. No one died thanks to the emergency systems I had designed, but the damage was done. The agency needed a scapegoat. I was convenient. I was young, I was female, and I was outspoken. They branded me as reckless. I accepted the blame because fighting it would have exposed classified security flaws. I chose integrity over reputation. The silence in the trailer was absolute. Even the rain dripping from the roof seemed to pause. Director Holloway looked at Alara with new eyes. The disrespect of the previous weeks evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of awe. She realized now that the discrepancies Alara had flagged were not the anxieties of a nervous junior employee, but the precise observations of a master engineer who had seen the worst-case scenarios firsthand. Pause. If you are captivated by this revelation of Alara's true past, please hit the like button. Your support helps us continue to uncover stories of hidden heroes and unjust treatments. Subscribe to ensure you don't miss the final chapters of this saga. General Sterling leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I tried to clear your name, Alara, but the bureaucracy is a beast that feeds on simplicity. It is easier to blame a person than to admit a system is broken. I lost track of you after you left the agency. I assumed you had gone into academia. I did not know you were here, hiding in plain sight, letting men like Marcus Thorne dictate the safety of public infrastructure. I wasn't hiding, Alara corrected gently. I was healing, and I was watching. I wanted to see if I could still do the work without the burden of the title. I wanted to see if the work itself was enough. And was it? Sterling asked. Alara looked at her bandaged hands. Until the cost of silence became too high. Sterling stood up. Well, the silence is over. Director Holloway, I am formally requesting Dr. Vance's services as a federal consultant for this project. Her clearance is being reinstated effective immediately. Any interference with her work will be considered a violation of federal security protocols. Holloway blinked, then nodded vigorously. Understood, General. Dr. Vance, you have full authority over the stabilization efforts. What are your next steps? Alara stood up. The fatigue was still there, but it was overshadowed by a surge of purpose. We need to monitor the grout cure for another 24 hours. Then we need to redesign the foundation for the remaining pylons. The current plan is obsolete. I will draft the new specifications. And I need a team. Not just any team. I need engineers who listen. Holloway smiled. You have them, Davis. Chief Engineer Davis stepped forward, extending his hand. Dr. Vance, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry, we all are. We let ego cloud our judgment. We are ready to follow your lead. Alara shook his hand. Thank you, David. Let's get to work. Pause. As Alara takes command, remember to share this video with anyone who believes in the power of competence over charisma. Your shares help spread these important messages of justice and integrity. Comment below with your thoughts on how workplaces can better value quiet expertise. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity, but the dynamic in the command center had shifted entirely. Alara was no longer the invisible analyst fetching coffee. She was the architect of the solution. She worked with a precision that mesmerized the team. She didn't just give orders, she explained the reasoning behind them. She taught them. She showed them how to read the subtle signs in the soil data, how to anticipate the stress points, how to think like a structural organism rather than a collection of parts. The engineers, previously accustomed to Marcus's top-down dictatorship, flourished under her collaborative leadership. They asked questions. They offered suggestions. They felt valued. And in return, they gave her their best work. Marcus Thorne, meanwhile, was not present. He had been escorted off the site and barred from returning. But his influence lingered like a bad smell. Rumors circulated that he was contacting his lawyers, preparing to sue for wrongful termination, claiming that Alara's actions had caused emotional distress and professional ruin. He was spinning the narrative, trying to paint himself as the victim of a conspiracy. But General Sterling was not a man who tolerated such frivolity. He had already initiated a federal inquiry into Meridian Engineering's practices. The audit would be thorough, invasive, and devastating for anyone who had cut corners. On the second day, as the sun rose over the stabilized pylon, a black sedan pulled up to the site. Out stepped Marcus Thorne. He was dressed in a fresh suit, his hair gelled, his face composed into a mask of righteous indignation. He marched towards the command trailer, flanked by a sleek lawyer in a gray suit. Security tried to stop him, but Marcus pushed past them. I have a right to be here, he shouted. This is my project. I built this team. Alara was inside, reviewing the final stress tests. She heard the commotion and walked out. She stood on the steps of the trailer, looking down at Marcus. He looked small from up there, small and brittle. Mr. Thorne, Alara said, her voice carrying over the wind. You are trespassing, please leave. Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Trespassing? On my own site? You're the one who's trespassing, Vance. You're a fraud, a disgraced hack who got lucky, and I'm going to prove it. My lawyer is here to serve you with papers for defamation and interference with contract. The lawyer stepped forward, holding an envelope. Ms. Vance, please accept this notice of legal action. Alara didn't move. She didn't take the envelope. She looked at General Sterling, who had emerged from the trailer behind her. Sterling walked down the steps, his presence imposing. He stopped beside Alara. Mr. Thorne, Sterling said, his voice like ice. Do you know who this is? Marcus sneered. I know exactly who she is, a nobody. She is Dr. Alara Vance, Sterling said. Former lead structural consultant for the IAEA, recipient of the Presidential Medal for Engineering Excellence, and currently a federal agent overseeing this investigation. If you serve her with those papers, you will be served with a countersuit for obstruction of justice and falsification of federal records. Do you understand? Marcus's face drained of color. The lawyer lowered the envelope, looking uncertain. Falsification? The lawyer asked. Mr. Thorne altered the soil reports, Sterling said. We have the digital logs, we have the emails, we have the testimony of his entire team. He knew about the fault line. He suppressed the data to keep the project on schedule. That is not just negligence, Mr. Thorne, that is criminal endangerment. Marcus staggered back as if struck. That's a lie, he whispered. I didn't. You did, Alara said softly, and I have the proof. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. I backed up the original data before you deleted it. I also recorded our conversation from the day I flagged the discrepancy. You called it a glitch. You told me to stop looking for problems. That recording, combined with the altered logs, is enough to send you to prison. Marcus looked at the USB drive, then at Alara, then at Sterling. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure terror. He realized finally that he had not been battling a weak, soft woman. He had been battling a titan who had chosen to wear silk instead of armor, and he had lost. Pause. This confrontation is the climax of our story. If you are enjoying the vindication, please subscribe to our channel. We have many more stories of justice served and truths revealed. Hit the bell icon to stay connected with our community. The arrest was not dramatic. There were no sirens, no handcuffs flashing in the sunlight. It was procedural, cold, and efficient. 2 federal agents approached Marcus and his lawyer. They asked him to come with them for questioning. Marcus didn't resist. He couldn't. He looked. At Alara one last time, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. You ruined me, he muttered. No, Marcus, Alara said. You ruined yourself. I just turned on the light. As they led him away, the workers on the site began to clap. It started slowly, a few hesitant claps, then grew into a roar of applause. It wasn't just for Alara. It was for the truth. It was for the fact that competence had won over politics. That integrity had survived the assault of ego. Alara didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply nodded, acknowledging their support, and then turned back to the work. The bridge still needed to be finished. The people still needed to cross it safely. That was her priority. Not the fame, not the revenge, but the service. Director Holloway approached her, tears in her eyes. Alara, she said, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for how we treated you, for how I treated you. Alara smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. It's okay, Director. You were under pressure. You trusted the wrong person. It happens. The important thing is that we fix it. And we have. Holloway shook her head. You're remarkable. Why did you stay? After everything, why didn't you just leave and let it fail? Because the bridge doesn't deserve to fail, Alara said. And neither do the people who build it. Everyone deserves a chance to do their best work, even if they've been misled. Pause. If this message of forgiveness and professionalism resonates with you, please leave a comment below. How do you handle workplace injustice? Your stories inspire us and our viewers. Don't forget to like this video to support our mission. In the weeks that followed, the Aurora Bridge project was revamped. Alara led the redesign, implementing stricter safety protocols and a more transparent communication structure. The media coverage was extensive. The story of the soft analyst who saved the bridge became a sensation. But Alara avoided the spotlight. She gave one interview to a technical journal where she discussed the engineering challenges and the importance of ethical leadership. She did not mention Marcus. She did not boast. She let the work speak for itself. General Sterling offered her a position back in Washington. a high-ranking role with full clearance and a significant salary. "Come home, Alara," he said. "Your country needs you." Alara considered it. She looked at the offer, then at the city of Seattle. She looked at the team she had built, the engineers who had learned to trust each other, to listen, to value humility. She thought about the peace she had found in the rain, in the quiet corners of the office, in the simple act of solving a problem. "Thank you, General," she said. "But I'm not done here. There are other bridges to build, other secrets to uncover. I think I'll stay, at least for a while." Sterling smiled. "I thought you might say that. You always did prefer the field to the office. Keep in touch, Doctor." He left and Alara returned to her desk. It was no longer in the corner near the restrooms. It was in the center of the room, surrounded by her team, but she didn't sit in the big chair. She sat in the same old chair with the frayed cushion. She pulled out her leather-bound notebook and began to write. Not equations this time, but reflections. Thoughts on leadership, on courage, on the quiet power of being too soft. Months later, the Aurora Bridge opened. It was a magnificent structure, soaring above the water, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. At the opening ceremony, Mayor Thompson gave a speech. He praised the engineers, the workers, the city, and then he called Alara Vance to the stage. "This bridge stands today because of one person," he said. "A person who was underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed, but who remained steadfast in her commitment to truth and safety. Dr. Alara Vance." The crowd erupted in applause. Alara walked to the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces. She saw Director Holloway smiling proudly. She saw Davis and the team cheering. She saw the citizens of Seattle safe and secure. She didn't give a long speech. She simply said, "Strength is not about how loud you can shout. It is about how firmly you can stand. Thank you for letting me stand with you." Pause. As we reach the conclusion of Alara's journey, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. We are committed to bringing you more stories that challenge stereotypes and celebrate the unsung heroes among us. Your support means the world to us. The aftermath of the bridge opening was a period of reflection for Alara. She received numerous job offers from prestigious firms around the world. She declined them all. She stayed at Meridian Engineering, which had undergone a complete cultural overhaul. Marcus Thorne was convicted of fraud and negligence. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. His reputation was shattered, not by Alara's vengeance, but by his own choices. He had tried to build a legacy on lies, and it had collapsed under the weight of the truth. Alara became a mentor. She taught young engineers not just how to calculate loads, but how to listen to their instincts, how to question authority, and how to value empathy as a tool for better design. She showed them that being soft meant being adaptable, being receptive, being human. And in a world of rigid structures and cold calculations, humanity was the most important variable of all. One evening, as she was leaving the office, she ran into a new junior analyst. The young woman was shy, holding a stack of papers, looking unsure of herself. She reminded Alara of herself 3 years ago. "Excuse me, Dr. Vance," the young woman said. I found a discrepancy in the wind load calculations, but my supervisor said it's probably nothing. Should I ignore it?" Alara smiled. She remembered the feeling of being dismissed. She remembered the fear of speaking up. But she also remembered the power of being right. "No," Alara said. "Don't ignore it. Bring it to me. We'll look at it together. Never let anyone tell you that your attention to detail is a weakness. It is your greatest strength." The young woman's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Dr. Vance." Alara watched her walk away, confident and empowered. And in that moment, Alara knew that her work was not just about bridges. It was about building people. It was about creating a world where competence was rewarded, where integrity was valued, and where no one had to be too soft to be strong. Pause. This final moment of mentorship completes the circle of Alara's story. If you were moved by her transformation and triumph, please share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Your shares help us spread positivity and inspiration. The story of Alara Vance is a reminder that we often misjudge strength. We confuse aggression with power and volume with authority, but true strength is quiet. It is persistent. It is the ability to remain dignified in the face of humiliation, to remain competent in the face of chaos, and to remain kind in the face of cruelty. Alara did not defeat Marcus Thorne by becoming like him. She defeated him by remaining herself, by refusing to compromise her values, by trusting her expertise, and by waiting for the right moment to let the truth shine. In our own lives, we may face similar situations. We may be underestimated, we may be dismissed, we may be called too soft, too sensitive, or too idealistic. But these labels are not insults. They are badges of honor. They indicate that we have retained our humanity in a dehumanizing world. They indicate that we have the capacity to care, to listen, and to heal. And in the end, it is not the loudest voices that shape the world. It is the ones that speak the truth. So the next time you're told that you are too soft, remember Alara Vance. Remember that softness is not weakness. It is resilience. It is the ability to bend without breaking. It is the ability to absorb the shock and still stand firm. And when the crisis comes, when the ground shifts and the structures fail, it is the soft ones who hold the world together. Pause. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more content. We have many more tales of injustice and vindication coming soon. Your support allows us to continue creating high-quality narratives that matter. As we close this chapter, we invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever been underestimated? How did you respond? Did you choose to fight or did you choose to rise above? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from our community. Your stories are a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. And if you are looking for more stories like this, check out our playlist on Hidden Heroes. You will find tales of nurses, teachers, engineers, and everyday people who stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. These stories are fuel for the soul. They remind us that goodness is not naive. It is strategic. It is powerful, and it is always worth the fight. Pause. Before you go, please take a second to hit the notification bell. We release new videos every week, and we don't want you to miss the next installment of our series. Stay tuned for more stories of courage, competence, and justice. In the end, Alara Vance did not seek glory. She sought peace, and she found it not in the absence of conflict, but in the resolution of it. She found it in the knowledge that she had done her duty, that she had protected the innocent, that she had honored her craft, and that she had stayed true to herself. That is the ultimate victory, not the defeat of the enemy, but the preservation of the self. So let us carry this lesson with us. Let us be soft but strong. Let us be quiet but clear. Let us be humble but unyielding, because the world needs us. It needs our compassion, our competence, and our courage. And it needs us to remember that no matter how dark the rain, the sun will eventually rise. And when it does, it will shine on those who stood firm in the storm. Pause. This is the end of our story, but the beginning of your reflection. Please subscribe to join our growing family of storytellers and listeners. Together, we can create a community that values truth and integrity. Thank you for watching. Final CTA, if this story inspired you, please share it with one person who needs to hear it today. A friend, a colleague, a family member. Let's spread the message that kindness is strength. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing in the power of the quiet hero. Pause. As the screen fades to black, remember, you are stronger than you know. And you are never too soft to change the world. See you in the next story.